We had just moved to Denver, Colorado, into a quiet old house with squeaky stairs and creaky doors. It was just me and my little girl, Lily, and we were so excited to start a new life. The first few nights were fine. Lily had her own room with pink curtains, a big stuffed bear, and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I tucked her in every night, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Mommy loves you to the moon." But on the fourth night, Lily said something strange. She pointed to her closet and said, "Mommy, the man in the closet is watching me." I froze a little. "What man, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to smile. She whispered, "He wears a hat. He has long arms. He doesn't blink." I chuckled nervously. "It's just shadows, honey. You're safe." I opened the closet. Nothing was there. I kissed her again and turned off the light. But that night, I heard something. A soft scratch, scratch, scratch coming from Lily's room. I ran in, heart pounding. She was awake, eyes wide open, covers pulled up to her chin. "He's in there again, Mommy," she whispered. "In the closet." I opened it again. Empty. But the air felt cold, like it had come from under the house. The next day, Lily didn't want to play. She just drew pictures. Picture after picture of a tall man with no eyes, no mouth, and a big black hat. I asked her, "Why does he look like that?" She said, "He doesn't have a face. He told me not to tell you." That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed outside her room, listening. At 2 a.m., I heard it again. Scratch, scratch, thump. And then something worse, whispering, but only one voice. Lily's. She was saying, "Okay, I'll be quiet. Don't take Mommy." I burst in and turned on the lights. She was sitting up in bed, staring at the closet. I pulled her into my arms, and her little body was shaking. I was done pretending. I grabbed a flashlight and looked inside that closet one more time, and that's when I saw it. At the very back of the closet was a little door. It was covered by clothes and boxes, but it was there, a crawl space door, just big enough for someone to squeeze through. I opened it. It led to the attic. I climbed in. It was dusty and dark. I could barely breathe. I crawled forward, and then I saw it. A blanket, an empty food can, and a shoe. Someone had been living up there. I backed out fast, slammed the crawlspace door shut, and called the Denver police. They came quickly, searched the attic, and found him. A man, dirty, thin, wearing a hat. He had been hiding up there for weeks. They said he'd been using an old entrance through the garage to sneak in and out. Lily saw him as they took him away. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the man from my closet." We moved out the very next morning. Now we live in an apartment. No attic, no creepy doors. Just us and lots of locks. Lily still draws pictures, but now she draws sunshine, rainbows, and cats. Except sometimes, when it's really quiet. She still looks toward her closet, and once, just once, she whispered, "He said he'll come back." Hi there. I want to tell you something that happened in our cozy little cabin in Banff. It's a real place with big trees, snow-capped mountains, and lots of animals. But something really weird happened there. Something spooky. It started with my oldest daughter, Lila. She was 5 when she began doing something strange. She started sleepwalking. That means she would walk around the house while she was still asleep. At first, I wasn't too worried. I thought, kids do funny things sometimes. But then, I started waking up in the middle of the night, and there she was. Lila would be standing right in the hallway, not moving much, just standing. Her feet would rock from side to side. Her eyes were open, but they looked like she wasn't really seeing anything. It was like she was looking through me. That part was scary. Sometimes, she would whisper weird words like, sir. But I couldn't understand her. Other times, she was completely quiet, just standing there, breathing. I would walk over to her and gently touch her shoulder. "Lila," I'd whisper, "It's okay, sweetie. Let's go back to bed." And she'd follow me, just like that, like a little robot. But then, something happened. One night, I woke up to a tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was quiet, like little fingers on a window, but it was not raining outside. I sat up and listened. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the hallway. I didn't wake Daddy up. I wanted to be brave. When I peeked out, I saw Lila. She was standing with her forehead pressed against the wall. Tap, tap, tap. She was slowly knocking her head against it. Her little fingers were brushing the wall, just like her head. She looked like she was trying to walk into the wall. Lila, I whispered, super soft. But she didn't answer. She just kept tapping her head slowly, over and over. It gave me chills. I walked closer and put my hand on her shoulder. She blinked, stepped back, and looked at me like nothing had happened. I walked her back to bed, tucked her in, and kissed her goodnight. She didn't remember anything in the morning. A few more times she did it, but then one day, she just stopped. No more sleepwalking. No more standing in the hallway. No more tapping on the wall. And then, years later, my youngest son Milo started sleepwalking too. At first I thought, oh, just like Lila. But then I noticed something very weird. Milo did the same things. He stood in the same hallway. He rocked his feet the same way. He stared with the same empty eyes. And one night, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. I knew what I'd find. Milo was standing in the same spot. He was knocking his forehead against the wall, just like Lila. He hadn't even seen her do that. He was too little back then. He brushed his fingers across the wall the same way. I called his name. Milo. No answer. I touched his shoulder. Nothing. Tap, tap, tap. It was like he was trying to go through the wall. Finally, I shook him gently. He blinked, stepped back, and let me lead him to bed. And just like Lila. After a while, he stopped. Just like that. No more sleepwalking. No more tapping. It was over. Or so I thought. Many years later, both kids had grown up and gone to college. Our cabin felt so quiet. So Daddy and I decided to fix things up, paint the walls, change the floors, stuff like that. One day, I was pulling down some old wallpaper in the hallway. The same hallway where both Lila and Milo had sleepwalked. And guess what I found? Underneath the paper was something shiny. It was a mirror. A big old mirror. Someone had covered it up years ago. It was right in the same place where both of my children had pressed their heads. Right there. My heart went thump, thump. I just stood and stared. They couldn't have known the mirror was behind the wall. It was hidden. And yet, both of them had tried to walk right into it. I felt so scared, like we had found something we weren't supposed to. I took down the mirror and threw it away. I didn't want it in the house anymore. I still don't know why my kids sleepwalked to that exact spot, or how they both did the same thing. But sometimes, at night, when everything is quiet, I think I hear something. Tap, tap, tap. Hi, my name is Teddy. I used to live in a big city called Vancouver. It rains a lot there, and the sky is gray most of the time. I liked the clouds. They made everything feel soft and sleepy. When we moved to a new neighborhood near Stanley Park, I was in second grade. My mom and dad said we had to move because of Dad's job. I didn't mind too much. I made friends fast. One day, I met a boy named Nicky. He was quiet but nice. He had big, round eyes and always wore a red hoodie. We played tag and hide and seek. He liked pretending to be monsters and would always growl when he chased me. I thought it was silly. Mom said I could have a sleepover, but Nicky's mom, Miss Kelly, said it was better if I slept at their house. Nicky gets nervous away from home, she told my mom. Miss Kelly looked sweet. She had soft brown hair and talked very gently, like a teacher reading a bedtime story. So we said yes. That Friday night, Mom dropped me off at Nicky's house. It was a little old near the edge of the park. Trees leaned over the roof like they were whispering secrets. I went inside. It smelled like cinnamon and something else I didn't know, kind of like old paper. Nicky's room was in the basement. It was dark and chilly, but he had 2 air mattresses side by side. We played board games and ate popcorn. Everything felt normal. Then we turned off the lights. I woke up later. I don't know what time it was. It was still very dark. I heard something. Whispering. At first I thought it was Nicky talking in his sleep. But then I saw it. A dim, flickering light coming from the bathroom near the stairs. It wasn't a light bulb. It looked like a candle. I sat up and peeked. Nicky wasn't in bed. I heard him talking, but his voice was different. He was standing in front of the mirror, and he wasn't calling himself Nicky anymore. He was saying, "Mr. Moss wants to come out. Mr. Moss is hungry." I froze. I couldn't move. Nicky, or whoever he was smiling at the mirror. He laughed, but it didn't sound like a kid. It was deep and scratchy, like a grown-up trying to sound silly, but not funny at all. Then, the candle went out, and the whole basement turned black. I lay down, fast, and shut my eyes. My heart was pounding. I thought, maybe if I stayed still, he wouldn't notice me. But then, I heard the bathroom door creak open, and the whispering came closer. It was right above me. It didn't sound like English anymore. The words were all messed up, like, "Sha kala, fora ni, dun 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 moss." I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I was too scared. Then it stopped. A minute later, I heard the creaky bathroom door again, and Nicky got back in his bed like nothing had happened. In the morning, he was normal, laughing, smiling, like it never happened. When Mom picked me up, I didn't say anything at first. But in the car, I started crying. I told her everything. She looked scared, not mad, just scared. Later, I heard her talking to Miss Kelly on the phone. At first, Miss Kelly just laughed and said, "Oh, Nicky has a wild imagination." But then Mom said, "My son is terrified." And Miss Kelly got quiet. She said that Nicky had behavioral problems, that sometimes he thought he was someone else. She said doctors thought it was something he might grow out of. Miss Kelly even said he had a different name when he was like that. M.R. Moss. I didn't want to go back. Then, a few days later, something scary happened. Nicky got in trouble at school. He hit another kid during lunch. The school sent out a message to all the parents. Nobody said exactly what happened, but people were whispering in the hallways. And then, just like that, Nicky and Miss Kelly were gone. They moved out. No moving trucks, no goodbye. Just gone. Mom tried calling. The number was disconnected. We even went to the house. It was empty, dusty, like nobody had lived there in a long time. We never saw them again. Sometimes when it's rainy and dark, I think about that night, about Nicky whispering to the mirror, about M.R. Moss. Mom says it was probably just pretend, but I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. And sometimes, when I'm trying to fall asleep, I think I hear the whispering again. Sha kala, dun 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 moss. Hi, my name is Lucy, and I live in a little house near the woods in Salem, a place where people long ago believed in witches. My mommy and I used to bake cookies, read bedtime books, and giggle under the blankets when it rained. But then, something happened. One night I had a bad dream. In my dream, Mommy ran into my room. Her eyes were big and dark, and her mouth was wide open like she was screaming, but I couldn't hear her. She grabbed my arm and shook me hard. My whole bed was shaking. I cried, "Stop, Mommy!" But she wouldn't stop. Then I woke up. I was all sweaty. My heart was thumping. I looked around. My nightlight was on. Everything was quiet. I thought it was just a dream. But then, bang! My door flew open. Mommy was standing there. Same wild eyes, same open mouth. She grabbed my arm and shook me, just like in the dream. She yelled something I couldn't understand, like growling words. I screamed, "Mommy, stop!" Then, just like that, she let go and walked away. Like nothing happened. The next morning, I asked her, "Mommy, why did you come into my room last night and yell?" She looked confused. "What are you talking about, sweetie?" She didn't remember anything. That's when I got really scared. A few days later, I heard a weird sound coming from our backyard. It wasn't like someone crying or yelling. It was laughing. But the laughing sounded too loud, too wild. I ran to the window to look. Mommy was in the yard. She was smiling, but her smile was wrong. It was too big. She was holding a huge snake with her bare hands. I froze. "You don't understand. Mommy hated snakes. She wouldn't even let me watch cartoons with snakes in them. But now she was holding one like it was a teddy bear." She looked at me and said, "Come here, Lucy." I took a step back. I whispered, "Mommy." She tilted her head, still smiling. Her eyes looked empty, like she didn't even know me. I ran. I locked the door and hid. Later, she walked back inside like nothing was weird. When I asked her about the snake, she said, "What snake? You must have been dreaming." But I know I wasn't. Then came the scariest night of all. My church in Salem had a fun sleepover for kids. There were songs, snacks, and bedtime stories. I was so happy to be there. It felt safe. At around midnight, we were lying in our sleeping bags when knock, knock, knock. The knocking was loud, too loud. It came from one side of the church, then the other, then the back, and then all sides at once. It was like something was circling the building. Everyone got scared. "It's just the wind," someone whispered. But it wasn't. I ran to wake up Pastor Tim, who was asleep in his office. "There's something outside." He rubbed his eyes, stood up, and walked to the front door. The moment he touched the knob, the knocking stopped. He opened the door slowly, and there she was. My mommy, barefoot. Her dress was wet with sweat even though it was freezing outside. Her hair hung down like wet ropes. Her lips were moving but no sound came out. Then she saw me. Her mouth opened into that same too big smile. She walked toward me, step by step, like she was floating. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Pastor Tim whispered, "Stay here." But I couldn't. I walked to her. I got in the car. I don't know why. I just did. She didn't say a single word the whole ride home. When we got there, she stopped at the door and just stared at me. Her eyes didn't blink. I ran to my room, locked the door, and hid under the blanket all night. The next morning, Mommy was in the kitchen flipping pancakes like everything was normal. She smiled and said, "Ready to be picked up from the church, sweetie?" I felt cold all over. "But you already picked me up," I whispered. She tilted her head again. "What do you mean?" She didn't remember. No one at church talked about that night. No one even mentioned the knocking. It was like it never happened. Now I'm bigger. Mommy isn't here anymore. She's gone. But I still think about those nights. Was Mommy sick? Was it something in her head? Or was it something else? Something dark? I don't know if I believe in ghosts or demons or magic, but sometimes, when I'm alone in bed, I hear knocking on the wall. Knock, 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 and I wonder, is she back? Hi, my name is Sam, and I live in a little yellow house near the ocean in Victoria, British Columbia. It's a quiet place with big trees, foggy mornings, and the sound of seagulls crying in the sky. But something really scary happened here. Something I still think about every single night. It all started when my little boy, Max, turned 3. He was sweet, always laughing, always hugging his stuffed moose. But then, he made a new friend. An invisible friend. At first, I thought it was cute. Max would talk to the air and giggle. He said his friend's name was Jamie. "Jamie says he likes my room," Max would say. I smiled. "That's nice, honey." But then, Max started saying strange things. One morning, while I was brushing his hair, Max said, "Jamie likes peanut butter, but it made his throat hurt and he died." My hand froze. "Where did you hear that?" I asked. Max just shrugged. "Jamie told me." but that couldn't be. Because Jamie was the name of my little brother, the one who died when he was 7 from a peanut allergy. I never told Max about Jamie, not once. He was too little to know that story. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. That night, Max whispered to the darkness, "Jamie wants to sleep in my bed." I peeked through the door and saw Max sitting upright, his eyes locked on the empty corner of the room. There was no one there, but the air felt cold. My breath came out like little clouds, even though the heater was on. The next day, Max drew a picture. It was him, holding hands with a tall boy who had no face. "That's Jamie," Max said, smiling. I felt sick. I kept the drawing. I still have it. A few days later, Max came running into the kitchen. "Jamie's mad," he said. "Why is Jamie mad?" "Because you forgot his birthday." I dropped the plate I was holding. It shattered. Jamie's birthday was October 19th. I hadn't thought of it in years, but that morning had been October 19th. I sat down. My hands were shaking. "Where is Jamie now?" I asked. Max looked toward the stairs. "In the attic." We hadn't opened the attic since we moved in. It was dusty and full of old boxes. Max was never allowed up there. That night, I heard something. Bang, thump, bang. The attic door creaked open all by itself. I went up with a flashlight. The beam shook in my hand as I stepped over creaky wooden boards. "Jamie?" I whispered. Then the light flickered. I heard a laugh, a child's laugh, but it didn't sound like Max. It sounded like Jamie. My heart pounded. I ran back down and locked the attic door. The next morning, Max had dark circles under his eyes. "Jamie says you made him SAD, he said. "He wants you to remember." That night, Max started sleepwalking. I found him at 2 a.m., standing by the attic door, whispering, "I'll come with you soon." I picked him up and cried. The next day, I brought out an old photo album with Jamie's picture in it. I showed it to Max and asked, "Do you know who this is?" Max's face lit up. "That's Jamie. He plays with me every night." I felt a wave of terror wash over me. I decided we had to leave. I packed bags, ready to take Max and drive far, far away. But before we could go, Max said something that made my blood freeze. He looked up at me and said, "Jamie says I can't leave. He says you promised you'd never leave him again." I never said that. But once, a long, long time ago, when Jamie was sick, I remember holding his hand and whispering, "I'll always be here. I'll never leave you." Did he hear me? Is he still here? I don't know what Jamie is now. A memory? A ghost? Something else? But ever since then, the air in our house never feels warm. I hear footsteps when no one is walking, and Max still talks to the corner of his room, whispering things I can't understand. I tried to forget. I tried to move on. But every night, I hear a voice outside Max's door. It says, "You promised."